Good evening, everyone. I'm Ankit, and you're watching the Daily News Simplified. And today is 19th of September. Now, as you can see, we'll be dealing with five important topics. And before moving forward, please make sure to hit the like button and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, we all know elections in India is a celebration of Indian democracy. In this festival, we witness many political parties and their representatives. They come to our doorstep seeking for our votes. Now, this also includes rallies by major political players, be it the Prime Minister or the members of the opposition. And also, after knowing all of these facts, we as voters go in line and vote for our selected representatives. Now, after the election process is completed, a winner is usually declared, which means that our chosen representatives will then go on and select the government. Now, this frequent elections which is happening in our country these days, it is a subject of deep concern. And knowing this, the government was of the opinion that India will witness simultaneous elections or one nation, one election. Now, in this process, currently what we see that we give votes for municipalities, Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies at different times. But when the simultaneous poll will come into action, we will go to a particular voting booth at a single day and then we'll simultaneously vote for our representatives, which will go into Lok Sabha, state legislative assemblies, and our local bodies. Now, this solution, which was passed by the government, it met with several criticisms and roadblocks by various stakeholders in Indian political system. So to assuage their concerns, the government it constituted a high-level committee report on simultaneous elections, and this high-level committee was headed by former President of India, Mr. Ramnath Kovind. Now, this committee deliberated the opinions and sought opinions of different stakeholders, and it submitted a report in March of the year 2024. Now, today's news article it highlights that the Union Cabinet has accepted the recommendation of this very particular committee, and then it will bring many new amendments to the Constitution to implement the simultaneous polls, which we otherwise known as one nation, one election. Now, this news article are important from GS paper 2 perspective because the syllabus highlights parliament and state legislatures its functioning. When conducting simultaneous polls, it aims to rationalize the systems of elections in the country. Therefore, it is also important from salient features of Representations of People Act, the act which regulates the conduct of election in our country. Further, questions from this very topic have been asked before in the mains examination, case in point, in the year 2017. So we know this topic is important from mains examination perspective. Now, currently, the systems of election which happen in India are quite frequent. Case in point, this upcoming election schedule, which was given in the report of High Level Committee on Simultaneous Election. Now, in the year 2024, that is this year, we witnessed elections to the country's Lok Sabha, in addition to elections to few state legislative assemblies, be it Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Andhra, as well as Odisha. And this chunk of elections will be closely followed by elections which will happen in states such as Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir, as well as Maharashtra in near future. Further, from this table, you can see that every single year from 2024 to 2028, elections in various states will happen in different parts of that year. So, this highlights that the process of election at one particular time will be going on in some part of the country or the other. So, this highlights that frequent disruption that happens in a country due to the process of elections. Now, the demand for simultaneous elections also highlights the issues which are related to conduct of frequent elections in our country and why the government wants to do away with the practice of conducting frequent elections. We will discuss it in this particular slide. Now, every time the elections are announced in the country, and till the time the results are declared, there is in process or in place a model code of conduct for conduct of various stakeholders in the Indian election process. Now, this model code of conduct, it also determines what kind of decisions the government of the day can implement during the time election is in process. Now, this model code of conduct, it restricts the power of government to undertake key policy and day-to-day decisions. So, whenever the frequent elections happen, it can lead to frequent impositions of model code of conduct, which we can argue can lead to policy paralysis, particularly with that of government policies. Because during this time, government will not be able to take key policy decisions which will affect the development well-being of our country's population. Also, during the process of election, we witnessed huge election expenditures by various stakeholders. Be it Election Commission of India, it spends large amount of money, which it which includes conduct of elections, mobilization of various security forces, as well as election staff, as well as printing and movement of EVMs and various ballot papers. Also, political parties as well as various political candidates, they spend huge amount of monies in election rallies, printing of pamphlets, distribution of money to their cadres, and also various other election expenses. So this huge amount of election expenditures, when frequent elections happen, this huge amount of election expenditures increase. So one argument is that by doing away with the frequent elections, we can also aim to reduce this huge election expenditure, which is incurred currently by all stakeholders in the Indian political system. Also, whenever there is an election around the corner, we witness race of competitive populism among many political parties in the country. For example, in states such as Tamil Nadu, we have witnessed in near past that many political parties have promised freebies. That if they come to power, they will distribute goods and services. And also, these days, political parties are promising huge freebies such as distribution of increased pension, such as old pension scheme, and also distributing key money to various sections of the society. Now, this competitive populism among the stakeholders of Indian political system, it can burden India's states checker hugely. That is why to prevent competitive populism among political parties, we need to do away with the conduct of frequent elections. Also, during the process of elections, in election rallies and speeches, we witness political parties and their respective candidates appealing to voters based on their caste, religion, as well as other identity based affiliations. And this promotion and perpetuation of identity based affiliations, it perpetuates the existing divide in the Indian society, and it pits one section of the society against the another section. So during the process of frequent elections, it increases or perpetuates the divide which currently exists in Indian society. Also, during the conduct of election, the Election Commission of India diverts various governmental resources into conduct of election, be it security forces such as CAPFs or diversion of government employees to conduct and participate in the election process necessitates that there is a huge diversion of resources for conduct of election. So to prevent diversion of government resources into conduct of elections and rather make themselves responsible for their original work is the need to do away with the conduct of frequent elections. Also, whenever we divert significant government resources for election purposes, it also imposes several incalculable socio-economic costs. Because, for example, teachers form a large chunk of election related officials. So, what if the teachers are deviated from their regular process of teaching into election work? It does away or it negatively affects their students. Also, whenever security staff is deviated for election related purposes, it also endangers the internal and external security of Indian country. So these are the incalculable cost which has certain implications on India's societal, economic as well as security fabric. So these are the issues related to frequent elections, and this is the key reason why India wants to implement this process of simultaneous election. Now, in this regard, let us understand what are the suggestions given by the high level committee on the simultaneous election on how to implement the process of one nation, one election. Now, this committee proposed a two-step mechanism. That in first step, the synchronization or simultaneous elections of Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies will happen. And after this first step is achieved, then the second step will happen. That is elections to the local bodies within a period of 100 days. So, to implement this proposed mechanism, the committee suggested in bringing synchronization of terms of Lok Sabha with that of state legislative assembly. And in this regard, the committee highlighted the need to amend Article 82 with introduction of new section called Article 82 subsection A into the Indian Constitution. Now, according to the committee, at the start of Lok Sabha, for example, in 2029, whenever there is a first sitting of Lok Sabha, it will be designated as an appointed date. And any legislative assembly which is elected after the appointed date, it will have a same tenure as that of this particular Lok Sabha. And the tenures of Lok Sabha and legislative assembly will end after the period of 5 years of the appointed date, that is in the year of 2034. For example, elections of Uttar Pradesh are to happen in the year of 2032 in normal circumstances. So, whenever the elections of state of Uttar Pradesh will happen in the year 2032, the tenure of that legislative assembly of Uttar Pradesh will only be until the year 2034. So, in that process, the terms of legislative assembly of Uttar Pradesh as well as Lok Sabha will be synchronized. And this will be the case with other state legislative assemblies as well. For example, if any state legislative assembly it comes into power in the year 2031, then also it will dissolve in the year 2034, thereby synchronizing the term of this legislative assembly with that of Lok Sabha. So this is how the committee wants to bring synchronization in the terms of Lok Sabha as well as all the legislative assemblies of India. That the terms of these legislative assemblies which will be constituted after 2029, it will be curtailed so as to all of these legislative assemblies, their terms will end in the year 2034. And after we achieve the synchronization in terms of Lok Sabha and legislative assembly, then the government will initiate the synchronization and conduct of elections to the local bodies. And this will be done by amending the Article 324 by introducing subsection 324A into the Constitution through a process called constitutional amendment. And the original plan is to synchronize the term of both legislative assembly and Lok Sabha with that of terms of local bodies, and the elections of local bodies will happen within a period of 100 days of the synchronized election to the Lok Sabha and legislative assembly. So these were the changes related to bringing synchronization. And what if the house, be it Lok Sabha, legislative assembly, have a hung house, or the government falls due to no confidence motion or defection? So what will happen then? So in that case, the committee has highlighted the need to conduct fresh elections in the country to that particular Lok Sabha or legislative assembly concerned. However, whenever there is a new house in session, it will have a curtailed term which will end by the 5 years from the appointed date of the original Lok Sabha. So in that case, even if Lok Sabha has an election in the year 2030, the term of that particular Lok Sabha will also end in the year 2034, which is the end of 5-year term from the year 2029 of the original Lok Sabha. And same is the case with other legislative assemblies as well, which are constituted between the year 2029 and 2034, that all of them will end in the year 2034. And this can be done by amending the Article 83 as well as 172 of the Indian Constitution, which are responsible for duration of terms of Lok Sabha as well as Legislative Assembly. Further, the government has also brought forward the need to amend the process of enumerating the electorates in the country, which is the need to have a single electoral roll in the country. Because currently, there are two kinds of electoral rolls in the country. One is prepared by the Election Commission of India, which enumerates voters for Lok Sabha elections as well as elections to the Legislative Assembly, whereas state election commissions prepares a separate electoral roll for conduct of elections to local bodies in our country. So the committee, it highlights the need to do away with these two separate electoral roll and have a single electoral roll as well as single voter ID card, which will be prepared by Election Commission of India in support of state election commissions of different states. And in this regard, there is also a need to bring Constitutional Amendment Act, and this Constitutional Amendment Act needs the ratification of more than 50% of states in India. Further, in terms of handling the logistics of the One Nation, One Election, the committee highlights the need for Election Commission of India and state election commissions to estimate and hence procure the essential equipments to conduct elections, that are electronic voting machines as well as the VVPAT machines, which highlights what kind of vote a voter has given. So these were the steps that the committee has suggested in order to implement the process of One Nation, One Election, or otherwise called as the process of simultaneous election. Because as against conduct of frequent elections in the country, the government is highlighting the need to conduct elections of the Lok Sabha, Legislative Assembly, as well as local bodies in a simultaneous manner, which will reduce the disruption caused by the electoral process in the country. Now, with this, we move to second article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Hindu as well as Indian Express explained section. And these article highlights that India has frozen its talk with Pakistan related to the dealings of Indus Water Treaty. Now, this news article is important from GS paper to syllabus because the syllabus highlights bilateral agreements which involve India or affects India's interest. And Indus Water Treaty is a bilateral agreement between India as well as Pakistan on the need to divide the waters of Indus river system. Further questions related to this very topic has been asked previously by UPSC in the year 2016 after the Uri attack, when there was a huge demand to abrogate the Indus Water Treaty. Now, whenever there was this undivided India, it was irrigated by a river system called Indus. Now, after the undivided India was divided or partitioned into two countries, that was India and Pakistan, there emerged many conflicts, one of which was the issue related to division or use of Indus water rivers. Now, there are various rivers as well as tributary, which you can see in this map. Now, in this water treaty, it was signed in the year 1960 between India and Pakistan, and the treaty was brokered by a World Bank, which acted as a guarantor of this very treaty. Now, the objective of bringing in this water treaty was to give in writing what are the rights and obligations of both India and Pakistan with respect to use of Indus river water. Now, this treaty highlighted the how to use the river water of Indus, that India was given an unrestricted access to use the waters of three eastern Indus rivers. That is, India was given the unrestricted use or the power to use the waters of river Ravi, Beas as well as Satluj in an unrestricted manner. Whereas The Pakistan was given the control of three western rivers, that was river Indus, Jhelum as well as Chenab. However, despite this access given to Pakistan, India was given limited use rights over the western rivers, that India can use the waters of western river for the purpose of irrigation, for purpose of transport, as well as for the purpose of power generation, provided it does not change the flow of river water of the western rivers. Now, the implementation of this Indus Water Treaty will be taken by a permanent Indus Commission, which will have two commissions, one each from India and Pakistan, and it will discuss various provisions of this treaty. Also, according to the treaty, the permanent Indus Commission is required to meet at least once every year. Now, this treaty also delineates the process of dispute resolution. That the first step, whenever there's a dispute between these two parties, they will approach the permanent Indus Commission. Now, in case the permanent Indus Commission fails to resolve the dispute, then the party will approach the neutral expert, which will be appointed by the guarantor of this treaty, that is World Bank. And even if this second process of dispute resolution mechanism fails, then the committee provides for the third step, that is committee of arbitration, that sits in the city of Hague, which is located in the country of Netherlands. So this is the summation of what is Indus Water River Treaty, that it provides the use of river water and it delineates the responsibilities of India with that of Pakistan. That is, according to the treaty, India will have unrestricted access of the eastern rivers of the Indus water, whereas Pakistan will be entitled to the water of these rivers. Whereas India can also utilize this western rivers provided it does not change the course of these western rivers. Now, in recent times, the treaty and its implementation has faced various issues. For example, India is constructing various hydroelectric power projects such as Kishanganga Hydroelectric Power Project, which is over the river called Jhelum. Whereas India is also constructing a hydroelectric power project called Ratle Hydroelectric Power Project, which is over the river called Chenab. Now, if you notice, these are western rivers which the responsibilities of use of water is given to Pakistan. However, as India has a limited use right over these western rivers, that is why India is constructing these hydroelectric power projects, which is a run of river hydroelectric power projects, which does not store the water, rather, it utilizes the running water to produce electricity. Now, Pakistan is of the opinion that India is not within its rights to construct these hydroelectric power projects because it violates the conventions or the provisions of this treaty. Now, this Pakistan's opposition to India's project has went to the dispute resolution mechanism, which is highlighted here, that it is a three-stage process. Now, because of the failure of permanent Indus Commission to settle this dispute, the matters has now reached to the other stages, that is to the neutral expert or to the permanent court of arbitration, which is in Hague. Now, the judicial course of action, which is given in the treaty, it highlights that the dispute parties have to first approach the neutral arbitrator. After only this neutral arbitrator is unable to solve the dispute, then only then the parties can approach the court of arbitration. However, in recent times, Pakistan has forced the guarantor of the agreement, that is World Bank, to simultaneously start these two process in a parallel manner. So, because of these two process which are happening in parallel manner, it highlights that the role of guarantor in this agreement is quite limited, and Pakistan is bypassing this neutral expert to and it is appealing to the permanent court of arbitration for the recourse of its dispute. So this is what the issue is, that Pakistan is opposing India's power projects, and the Pakistan has appealed to the permanent court of arbitration rather than appealing to the neutral expert, which highlights the limited role of judicial recourse which is available in the treaty. And this is why there has been increased demand of amending or revisiting the provisions of this treaty. Further, this treaty also is witness to strained bilateral relations between India and Pakistan, because we all know Pakistan is perpetuating cross border terrorism into the country, that is India, and this has strained the bilateral relations between these two countries. And because of these strained relations, the meeting, which are to happen once a year, it is does not happening because of the strained relationships. Further, the meetings have been postponed due to various conduct of terrorist activities in Pakistan, which is responsible for terror attacks in India. And also, because of these strained bilateral relations, we also witness non-sharing of river water data, which is to happen if the treaty is to be implemented in true letter and spirit. And because of strained relations as well as non regular data sharing, it is quite difficult for both of the parties to estimate what kind of demand of water is there for Indus Water River. Also, due to impact of climate change, we have witnessed there is increased demand for water in the country, be it both Pakistan and India. And also, India is witnessing agricultural revolution in its western part of the country, particularly in states such as Haryana as well as Punjab, both of which is irrigated by the eastern as well as western river of the Indus river system. So, because of increased demand of water due to impact of climate change, we are witnessing both of countries are demanding increased share of waters in the treaty. However, due to strained bilateral relation, the treaty it gave almost 80% of the water resources to Pakistan, whereas only 20% of the water resources of the Indus River water was given to India. And this highlighted the unfair nature of agreement. Now, because of strained bilateral relations between these two countries and the charged political environment that has been a result, there has been demands in India to do away with the historical injustice. That is, the demand for India is to have a greater share in Indus River waters. And this is why we need to take a look forward in what should be the way forward for the implementation of this very treaty. Hence, there has been demand both by Departmental Standing Committee of Parliament on Water Resources that there is a need to revisit the provisions of Indus Water Treaty. And experts have also suggested that we need to integrate the ecological perspective while revisiting or amending this very treaty. That first of all, due to climate change and other increase in population, we are witnessing increased demand for water. However, this increased demand for water should also undertake or take into account for the need to ensure environmental flow in this river water system. Because rather than supplying water, we also need to ensure that the health of aquatic river systems in this country is taken care of. And hence, there is a need to ensure environmental flow of the river water. Further, there is also a need to have an equitable and reasonable utilization of water river resources, particularly for that of India, because historically, India was only given 20% share of Indus river water. So, there is a need so as to cater to increased demand of water resources. India should be given higher share of water resources in this very treaty. However, there is also need to ensure that there is no harm to the lower riparian river countries such as that of Pakistan. That the need of India should also be taken care of without compromising on the need for people of Pakistan. So these were the provisions related to Indus Water Treaty, and with this we move to next set of articles. Now we move to next set of articles. The first of which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper on the very front page. Now, this article shows a beautiful picture of a Pulikali dance festival which is happening on the streets of Thrissur in the state of Kerala. Now, various aspects of India's culture and art and form, it is important from the perspective of prelims examination. Further, different dance practices which are prevalent in the country have been subject of UPSC's question in the past prelim years examination as well. So, in this regard, let us understand what is this Pulikali dance. Now, this dance festival it is held annually during the Onam festival, particularly on the fourth day of Onam. Now, this Onam festival is also known as Nalam Onam or Chattayam, and this dance practice it is performed by trained artists who entertain their mass by their dances. Further, the artists they paint themselves as tiger and leopards, and they dance on the rhythmic beats of traditional percussion instruments such as chenda, chengela, uduku, as well as thakil. Now, usually men and children perform this art form. However, from the year 2016, we have witnessed increased women participation in this dance practice as well. Now, the central theme of this dance it revolves around tiger hunting, and this process is symbolized by performers in their costumes and their movements. Further, performers they observe a 41 days fasting period before the first day of Onam before they indulge in this dance practice. Now, the practice of Pulikali dance it is originated or it is predominantly performed in Kerala's Thrissur district, and the origin can be traced to the reign of Maharaja Ramavarma, who was a ruler of Kochi over 200 years ago. Now, this particular Raja was credited of shaping the city of Thrissur, and he also extended patronage to Thrissur Puram festival. Now, this ruler also shifted his capital from this city to Thrissur. So, based on this information, let us now solve the practice question. Consider the following statements with reference to Pulikali art form. The first statement, it is an all women dance performance which is associated with Onam celebration. Now, it is associated with Onam celebration. However, majorly men and children participate in the dance performance. Hence, the first statement is incorrect. The second statement, the performance is accompanied by the musical instruments thakil as well as chenda, which is correct, as these are percussion based instruments which are utilized to give musical rhythms to the performance of Pulikali dance. Hence, second statement here is correct. The third statement, the art form, it originated under the patronage of Marthand Varma, who was a ruler of Travancore kingdom. Now, from the discussion, you can understand this is an incorrect statement because it originated in the reign of Maharaja Ram Varma Saktan Prampuram and not Marthandvar. So, the question asks us to identify incorrect statement. That is why statement 1 and 3 are correct. Hence, option C is the right answer. Moving to the next article of the day, which appeared, as you can see, both in the Hindu as well as Indian Express newspaper. And these articles highlights that government has allocated 5 lakh each to transform tribal houses into homestays. Now, this money will be given under a particular scheme called Pradhan Mantri Janjatiya Unnat Abhiyan. Now, various social sector initiatives taken for social development in the country is important from prelims examination. Case in point, a question which appeared in the 2017 prelims on National Nutrition Mission. So, various schemes which have been brought by the government related to social development, they are important from prelims perspective. So, in this regard, let us understand the various nuances of this very scheme. Now, if you can see the scheme, it highlights that there is a need to improve the socio-economic conditions of the tribal communities in India who are living in tribal majority village as well as in aspirational districts of our country. Now, the funding of this scheme is almost 79,000 crore rupees, which will be borne by both central as well as state governments. And the beneficiaries of this scheme are over 5 crore tribal people who inhabit as many as 459 districts across the country in 39 states and union territories. Now, the objective of this scheme is to fill the critical gaps which exist in housing by construction of Pakka housing projects, which will enable housing of tribal community members, as well as construction of power infrastructure, road infrastructure, as well as pipe water supply to the tribal communities' habitats. Also, initiatives in healthcare and education sector will also be taken so as to provide quality healthcare and education to the members of tribal communities, as well as achieve economic empowerment by creating more and more employment opportunities for tribal youth. Further, the government, as per the news article, is also undertaking significant development in tourism sector by construction of or promotion of construction of homestays in the tribal areas. Now, the key features of this scheme that it will be mapped on PM Gati Shakti portal, that it will be monitored directly by the Prime Minister's office, and the best performing districts will be given awards. Further, the primary focus of this scheme is on the aspirational blocks in the country, which is almost 500 blocks. However, it is also important to note that the scheme will be implemented also in non-aspirational blocks, that is in tribal majority villages. That means this scheme will be covered in total of more than 2700 blocks. Further, the implementation and monitoring of this scheme will be undertaken by as many as 17 ministries, because the scheme, it is a convergence scheme which is implementing various initiatives taken by these 17 ministries. Now, their respective ministries, they will utilize their funds from the developmental action plan for scheduled tribes over the period of next 5 years. Now that we have understood the various nuances of this scheme, let us solve the practice question with respect to Pradhan Mantri Janjatiya Unnat Gram Abhiyan. Consider the following statements. The first statement, the funding of this scheme comes exclusively from the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, which is incorrect, because the scheme, the funding, it not just come exclusively from the central government, but state government also have a fair share in funding of this scheme. The second statement, it will be implemented only in aspirational districts of the country, which is again incorrect, because the focus of the scheme is on aspirational district. However, it will also be implemented on other blocks in the country, because you can understand there are only 500 aspirational blocks in the country, whereas the scheme will be implemented in as many as 2740 blocks. The third statement, it is a physical and financial progress which will be monitored through PM Gati Shakti platform. This is the correct statement, as I have already highlighted here. Now, which of the statement given above are incorrect? That means you have to identify incorrect statement. Now, as first and second statement are incorrect, hence option A is the right answer to this practice question. And with this, we move to the last article of the day, which highlights that government is looking to continue the Pradhan Mantri Asha scheme. Now, this Pradhan Mantri Asha scheme was brought few years back because government is facing many challenges in implementation of its minimum support price regime policy. Now, under this MSP regime, government promises to the farmers that it will procure whatever crops the farmers will bring to the government, and it will pay them a minimum amount of price which is designated as minimum support price. Now, naturally, there are many shortcomings in the implementation of this scheme. That is, it is not implemented across the country. Rather, government is procuring only a handful of crops from states such as Haryana, Punjab, as well as Western Uttar Pradesh. Whereas, on the other hand, crops such as oil seeds and pulses are not being procured from other parts of the country. Also, to implement this scheme, government is incurring huge cost, which is borne by the state exchequer. Hence, to reduce the amount of money which is spent by this scheme, government brought forward a PM-AASHA scheme. Now, also questions related to economic and social development, particularly with that of agricultural sector, is important from the perspective of prelims. Case in point, this question which appeared on 2017 on soil health card scheme. So, in this regard, let us understand what was the original intention of bringing the Pradhan Mantri Annadata Aay Sanrakshan Abhiyan, which is abbreviated as PM-AASHA scheme. That it had three components. That is, first of all, providing a price support scheme where the government and state nodal agencies, it will physically procure other crops other than rice and wheat, such as pulses, oil seeds, and copra, and it will bear the procurement costs, which is borne under this price support scheme. Further, to reduce the financial burden on the government exchequer, the government is looking to provide only the deficient pricing to the farmers. That is, whenever farmers are selling their products into an open market, the difference between MSP and their selling price will be provided by the government in form of price deficiency payment. Further, to reduce the burden on the government agencies, government through this scheme, it also brought a pilot which promoted private sector procurement of various oil seeds by the private players in the country. Now, government has also looked to brought forward many other schemes into the PM-AASHA scheme. That is, in addition to PSS and PDS, government has also brought the price stabilization fund and market intervention scheme under the ambit of PM-AASHA scheme. That is, in addition to ensure remunerative prices to farmers, government is also looking to control the prices or volatile prices of essential commodities under this very scheme. For example, government has set up a price stabilization fund which ensures that government can procure stocks of pulses and onions wherever there is an increased supply of onions and pulses in the market. And whenever the supply of these products reduce and results into increase in cost of these products, the government then intervenes in the market by supplying this procured material into the market, which will again intended to increase the supply of the pulses and onion in the market. So, in crux, you can understand that whenever there is a sufficient supply of pulses, onions, tomatoes in the market, the government procures them utilizing the fund from PSF. And whenever the prices or there is a shortage of supply of pulses and onion in the market, the government ensures adequate supply by liquidating its stock under the market intervention scheme. So this is intended to protect consumers from extreme price volatility, and it also enables the government to maintain a strategic buffer of important agricultural commodities. So based on this information, let us now consider the practice question. Consider the following. That is, these four, how many of the above is or are component of PM-AASHA scheme? Now, these three are the component of PM-AASHA scheme. However, under this scheme, government is not legally guaranteeing the provision of MSP. That is, government, it is not obligated to buy every crop that is brought forward by the farmers to the government, which is otherwise the meaning of less legalized MSP. Hence, only three of the above components are under the PM-AASHA scheme. That's why the correct answer to this last practice question is option C. So, with this, I conclude our today's session of Daily News Simplified. Stay tuned to our YouTube channel. We'll see you again tomorrow at 6 p.m. And until then, I bid you a very good night.